On March 12, 2026, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held his first press conference since the war with Iran began, as he stood in front of reporters claiming that Israel was proving itself as a global superpower. Air raid sirens suddenly began echoing across central Israel. While Netanyahu was still speaking, the Israeli military confirmed it had detected another wave of ballistic missiles launched from Iran. It was already the sixth missile barrage of the day. 13 days into this war, Israel has struck more than 6,000 targets across Iran and spent over $11 billion in the first week alone. Yet despite that massive campaign, Iran is still launching ballistic missiles directly at Israel. Netanyahu tried to project strength during the briefing. He spoke about destroying Iran's capabilities and crushing the regime in Tehran. He talked about eliminating Iran's leadership, but hidden within his remarks was an admission that contradicts much of what Israeli and American officials have been telling the public since the war began. And once you hear it, the entire picture of this war begins to look very different. During the first week of fighting, Israeli officials claimed major success. The IDF said it had destroyed roughly 300 Iranian missile launchers. Reports suggested Iranian missile attacks had dropped by nearly 70%. Officials even claimed that nearly 3/4 of Iran's launch capability had already been wiped out. The message was clear: overwhelming force had crippled Iran's ability to strike back. But 13 days into the conflict, Netanyahu acknowledged something very different. He told reporters that Iran had buried large parts of its missile and nuclear infrastructure deep underground. He warned that if Israel had waited longer to act, those facilities could soon have become immune to any attack. That single word, immune, revealed something important. A leader describing a defeated enemy does not talk about weapons becoming immune to attack. What Netanyahu was really admitting is that there are still Iranian military assets the coalition cannot reach. In other words, the campaign has limits, and the battlefield evidence supports that reality. On the same day as a press conference, Iran launched 6 separate ballistic missile barrages at Israel. At the same time, Hezbollah launched more than 200 rockets from Lebanon in what the Israeli military described as a coordinated operation. Missiles struck residential areas, including a home in Hanil. Another rocket hit a house in Bina, injuring civilians. Schools across Israel remain closed as the country continues operating under a national state of emergency. 2 weeks into what Netanyahu originally described as a swift and decisive campaign, the war is proving to be neither swift nor decisive. The deadliest single incident occurred days earlier in the city of Beit Shemesh, about 30 kilometers from Jerusalem. An Iranian ballistic missile struck a communal shelter located inside a synagogue. 9 civilians were killed and dozens more were injured. 2 Israeli interceptor missiles were launched to stop the incoming warhead. Both failed to intercept the target. Even more alarming, the warning sirens in the area did not activate in time to give residents a standard 9-second alert. Iranian ballistic missiles can reach Israel in roughly 10 minutes. Israel's entire civil defense strategy depends on early detection, rapid alerts, and successful interception. In Beit Shemesh, all 3 systems failed simultaneously. That kind of failure exposes a serious vulnerability in Israel's defensive architecture. But the military battlefield is only part of the story. During the same press conference, Netanyahu spoke about one of his core objectives in this war: the collapse of Iran's ruling regime. He said the operation aimed to create conditions that would allow the Iranian people to overthrow their government. But when a journalist asked whether he could guarantee that outcome, Netanyahu admitted something striking. He said he could not promise that regime change would happen unless the Iranian people themselves rise up. His message to Iranians was simple: help is on the way, but ultimately the decision is yours. For a wartime leader directing an active military campaign, that statement carries major implications. It means the military operation alone cannot achieve the political objective being advertised. This is especially significant when compared with what American intelligence agencies had already concluded before the war even began. A classified report prepared by the U.S. National Intelligence Council in February 2026 concluded that neither limited airstrikes nor a prolonged military campaign was likely to cause regime change in Iran. Multiple intelligence assessments since then have reached the same conclusion. The Iranian government still maintains control over the country and is not at risk of immediate collapse. Even after the targeted killing of Iran's supreme leader during the opening strikes, the regime did not fracture. Instead, the Iranian Assembly of Experts quickly appointed his son, Mojtaba Khamenei, as the new supreme leader. Analysts describe him as even more hardline than his predecessor. His first message to the nation promised revenge and warned that the Strait of Hormuz would remain a powerful tool against Western pressure, and that warning has already had global consequences. Since the start of the war, the Strait of Hormuz has effectively been closed. Iran's Revolutionary Guard declared that no oil would pass through the waterway. Multiple commercial vessels have been attacked. Naval mines have been deployed across the strait. At least 16 attacks on ships have been reported in the area. Several sailors have been killed and around 150 vessels are now stranded. Oil markets reacted immediately. Brent crude surged from around $73 per barrel before the conflict to more than $130 within 10 days. Gasoline prices in the United States have already climbed sharply. In response, the International Energy Agency announced the largest emergency oil reserve release in its history. For 100 million barrels from member countries, Saudi Arabia has begun rerouting oil exports through Red Sea ports to avoid the strait entirely. Meanwhile, Iran continues to warn that oil prices could reach $100 per barrel if the conflict expands, and the war itself is becoming increasingly expensive. The Pentagon confirmed that the first 6 days of military operations cost more than $11 billion, making it one of the most expensive American military engagements since the opening phase of the Iraq War. More than 130 cities across Iran have been struck. Iran has also retaliated across the region. Missiles and drones have targeted Gulf states. Saudi Arabia intercepted multiple drones. The United Arab Emirates stopped dozens of missiles and UAVs. Qatar was forced to shut down production at 2 of its largest liquefied natural gas facilities after Iranian strikes hit the installations. Across the wider region, U.S. forces have come under attack at multiple bases. At least 7 American service members have been killed so far. Meanwhile, Israel is also fighting a second active front in Lebanon. Hezbollah continues firing rockets into Israeli territory, sometimes more than 200 in a single day. Israeli forces have expanded operations deeper into southern Lebanon and even conducted rare strikes in central Beirut. Despite previous claims that Hezbollah had been set back decades, the group clearly retains significant military capability. All of this raises a critical question. What exactly does victory look like in this war? The original objective was the collapse of Iran's government. Yet nearly 2 weeks into the conflict, the Iranian regime remains intact. Missiles continue to fly. Oil markets are in turmoil. The Strait of Hormuz remains blocked and the war is spreading across the Middle East for now. The fighting continues with no clear end in sight.